Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Real Clear Politics Takeaway for Thursday, May 13th. I'm Tom Bevan, co-founder and president of RCP.
And I'm Carl Cannon, Washington Bureau Chief.
Good morning, Carl. What's on your mind?
Well, I've been thinking of what the White House is enduring, all the incoming. And I think, that job, we were pretty hard on Donald Trump, but that job's harder than it seems, I believe, from the outside.
Well, what about that, Carl? We've got sort of cascading crises that are hitting the Biden administration. We've got the ongoing crisis at the border. We now have inflation. We have this pipeline, gas shortages in the Southeast now. We have war in the Middle East. There's a lot happening.
Well, and Tom, as if that's not bad enough, the Kentucky Derby's won by a horse on drugs. Former President Trump called the horse a junkie, and the Washington Nationals are in last place. Things are not. There is no joy in mud.
I'm not sure the Biden administration is responsible for either of those things, Carl. But it does seem like, we saw a story in the Washington Post that the administration sort of scrambling, trying to limit political damage from these gas shortages. They were caught off guard by the violence in the Middle East. They don't have an ambassador there, so they rushed an envoy to the region. Obviously, the border is a situation that has been sort of bedeviling them for months now. And suddenly, there are folks who are saying, certainly critics of the administration are saying Biden's in over his head. He doesn't know what's going on. This is, it only took him 5 months to turn America into, Jimmy Carter's 1970s. I think, is that fair, Carl? Or is this just, is this a coincidence of these crises all hitting now and the Biden administration, it's not their fault and they'll get a handle on it? What do you think?
Well, Donald Trump said it was unfair to Jimmy Carter, that Biden is worse than Carter. But look, it wasn't fair when Carter got blamed for all this. Presidents, they have the job. They get credit when the economy's good. They get blamed when it's bad, even if they had nothing to do with it, even if their policies really weren't to blame. Joe Biden's in this job early on. And I think, we take these things one at a time. But the problem, the hacking of that pipeline company, that's not Joe Biden's fault. That's not the Biden administration's fault. And the crisis at the border, different thing. He sent out these signals. And the toughest one is the Middle East. Are bad actors over there pushing his buttons because they see a weakness or they see a distraction or they're trying to test where this administration is. All administrations get tested, Tom. Jeff Birnbaum, our friend who's in Washington, he's in public relations now, he used to be a reporter. He wrote a book about in the first days of the Clinton administration, Bill Clinton. And Clinton came in, he was the man with the plan, putting people first. He had this whole book. And he followed these aides around, 3 or 4 or 5 of them specifically. And what he found was, and what they found, was that job is a reactive job, that the best plans, a president comes in with, you are responding to crises, not of your own making, crises around the world. And it's just, you have to respond well. And so I think it's fair to do is look at what Biden's response to these things.
Well, okay. So what has, we talked about the border. The response there has been, not great in terms of their ability to get a handle on that situation. Initially, their response to the...
Well, they haven't really accepted any responsibility that their policies in his election sent signals down there. And it makes you think they were unaware that this would happen. So that's not, you should be prepared.
And as far as the pipeline goes, obviously the hacking is not the Biden administration's problem. But their response to that, at least from the administration, was saying, look, this is a private company. Now, Biden did sign an executive order beefing up cybersecurity, and DHS did issue a temporary waiver for the Jones Act to help put get gas back in the gas stations around the country. So I don't know. What would you give their response to the pipeline crisis here if you had to grade them?
Well, I sort of agree with you. They were slow off the draw. Their initial response was not a good one. This is a private dispute between private parties. No, it was a crime committed against an American company, presumably by people who live abroad. So no, their first reaction wasn't good, but then they gained their footing. And I think this is one of these crises. It will subside. This is not the 70s. We don't have an oil boycott. And I think we'll forget about this in a few weeks. But again, the White House every White House has to learn this. Your initial response is judged, and people listen to it very carefully. So you have to be careful.
One of the crises that is rearing its head, and this may be more of a long-term thing, and quite frankly, a lot of people are saying it is directly tied to the Biden administration's policies, is the issue of inflation, right? We had, this terrible jobs number from last month suggesting that people are staying home because they're getting paid more, right? With the unextended unemployment benefits, the extended unemployment benefits.
Well, that's one inference. I mean, there are other causes, lack of child care.
Right, but then we've got rising prices of things like lumber and copper and all of these things. And we had this inflation number come out the other day, Carl, 4.2%, the biggest since 2008 or 2009. So quite a drastic jump. And this is something that, again, has to be concerning for the Biden administration because it's something that could will directly affect all Americans in their pocketbooks, especially lower income folks who are going to have to pay more for, to put gas in their car and food on their table.
Well, and there's two parts of that. First is, are any of these policies of the Biden administration contributing to inflation? Does all this borrowing of money, because all this money we're talking about, the trillion here and a trillion there, it's all borrowed, is that having inflationary pressure? So we have to examine that. It's complicated, and I'm not sure. But the other thing is, again, how they respond to it. So, Jimmy Carter didn't cause, 13% annual inflation, but he paid for it. And Biden will too if they can't get a handle on this.
All right. Well, we will leave it there. I'm Tom Bevan, co-founder and president of RCP.
And I'm Carl Cannon, Washington Bureau Chief for RealClearPolitics. This has been the RCP Takeaway for Thursday, May 13th. Join us tomorrow, Friday, for an extended version that's audio only of our podcast. Until then, so long.